For a very long time, essentially since I started this channel, I've been talking about Spaceport Cornwall and the quickly developing private spaceflight industry in the United Kingdom. What I haven't talked about is just how important this upcoming launch in late August is going to be for the European continent. This is not just the first private spaceflight launch from Britain, it's the first private spaceflight launch from Western Europe. Period. And that is a huge event and a little difficult to believe. I mean, given how much money the European Union has and the fact that Germany, France, and the United Kingdom all rank in the top 5 economies on the planet, you would think that this continent would have sent up a lot more missions by now. And they have to some degree, but not from Europe. It's mostly been through Arianespace and their launch facilities in French Guiana, but unfortunately Arianespace has not been able to compete, even though they've been getting government subsidies, in other words taxpayer money, just to keep them competitive. Their launch cadence is very, very slow compared to SpaceX and virtually everybody else who competes with them. The only way that Arianespace was able to be competitive was by utilizing Russian rockets, that is the Soyuz, in order to launch a wide variety of missions, most significant of which was OneWeb. But of course, recently the flaws of that plan became very, very apparent when the Russians cut off all access to the Soyuz, and Arianespace had to surrender their most important customer, that is OneWeb, to SpaceX and to the Indian Space Agency. So really, what does Europe have to offer? What are they going to do for the future? Are they just going to continue manufacturing lots of satellites because they've been doing that and shipping them to the United States? Or do they have another alternative? Well, as of August, at least for smallsats, which comprises the vast majority of all satellites that are manufactured on this planet, they're going to have another alternative, a very good alternative, and this first mission is going to be absolutely critical to the future of European private spaceflight. But even though the Virgin Corporation is a British institution, it is widely known that Virgin Orbit is an American company, as is Virgin Galactic. They have no facilities in Britain whatsoever, no manufacturing, no technological development, nothing. So is this really a European mission? Well, we're going to find that out in just a moment. Now, the two things that I find to be the most exciting about this mission is the fact that the United Kingdom has decided to embrace innovation and reusability from day one. This is not going to be a traditional vertical launch, it's going to be a horizontal launch, and there's going to be reusability built into this launch. Not only that, Virgin Orbit has plans for the future that's going to be making use of even greater reusability and greater innovative technologies. A very exciting company and very appropriate to be the first company to launch from the United Kingdom. Now, just to give you a quick review, Virgin Orbit operates under the philosophy that if they have a reusable aircraft launching the rocket from a high altitude, that is the reusable first stage, which is quite innovative. It's been done before, of course, but it's never been done this inexpensively. We're talking just north of $10 million per launch, which means that these companies are paying a few $1 million at most to go go into orbit. This is a price that was simply unheard of in the past, and yes, you can get a cheaper price by making use of a rideshare mission with SpaceX, but you have to wait a long time to get access to one of those missions, and your satellite better be going to the right orbit. Otherwise, you really don't have an alternative. Now, currently, Virgin Orbit has the greatest payload capacity of any small sat launch provider. That is to say that they can take 300 kilograms up to a 500 kilometer sun synchronous orbit, which is something that Rocket Lab currently cannot do. On top of that, they intend to improve that capability to 350 kilograms by the end of next year. However, even though they are leading the field, Virgin Orbit is not resting on their laurels, because Rocket Lab is now making use of parafoil booster recovery to reduce their costs, and of course they're going to have the Neutron out very soon as well. Virgin Orbit needs to adapt, and they need to adapt quickly if they want to survive. But before we get to that, I also like the innovation involved in their manufacturing process. It's almost entirely automated. There's a lot of robots and a lot of carbon fiber involved in the manufacturing process. Now, this is not always the best solution. There's a raging argument right now as to what's the best way to make a rocket. However, their process is capable of churning out rockets at a very, very rapid clip. In the future, Virgin Orbit should be able to maintain a launch cadence of at least 2 or 3 rockets per month, assuming that they have a large enough fleet of 747s to accommodate that. And they're adding another 2 747s as of right now, one of which is probably going to be dedicated to European customers. Say what you like about carbon fiber, it is strong and it is light, which makes a very big difference if you're trying to haul a rocket to a high altitude. And here's another advantage. These things are expensive, of course. Carbon fiber rockets are very costly, and now Virgin Orbit is paying attention to that. Very soon, they're going to be making use of the same parachute recovery system that Rocket Lab is going to be using. So really, you're only looking at the tiny upper stage of Launcher 1 as an expendable part of this rocket. On top of that, Launcher 2 is going to be launched from the fuselage. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, as opposed to under the wing, and that's going to triple the payload capacity of the rocket, taking Virgin Orbit into an entirely new world of competitiveness when it comes to small sat launch providers. But before Launcher 2 is even deployed, Virgin Orbit intends to add a third stage to Launcher 1 and power it with a cutting-edge propulsion system, solar electric ion engines. Now, that's something that's used on a wide variety of probes and satellites right now, but very seldom to power the upper stage of a rocket. And this will increase payload capacities for Virgin Orbit to some pretty impressive numbers. 180 kilograms up to geostationary orbit, and 150 kilograms all the way out to the moon. Yeah, not a lot as far as big launchers are concerned, but if you're talking about small sats, that is a huge deal. Solar electric propulsion opens up all kinds of missions, not just to the moon, but also to the planets. And Virgin Orbit already has a plan to send the first private mission out to Mars through a Polish company that's going to be providing the satellite or probe. This is going to be a remarkable moment, and actually sort of a small-scale space race, because Peter Beck wants to go to Venus. We'll see which company ends up being the first private mission to another planet. Exciting stuff that's seldom being covered by the media, and that really pisses me off, but that's kind of what I do. So even though this mission may seem like small potatoes to us Americans, it is a huge deal for Europe. It's really going to transform the face of private spaceflight in Europe, simply because satellite manufacturers in Europe are no longer going to have to worry about hauling their satellites on a transatlantic journey, especially if they're small sats. But what is particularly interesting about this mission? Well, I intend to find out, because I'm going to be making the journey out to the UK and out to Cornwall in late August. This is going to be the most expensive endeavor that I've ever engaged in, and if you want to support it, there are many ways to do it in the description, or just subscribe to my channel and that will make a huge difference as well. Okay, self-promotion is over. Let's move on to the actual mission in Cornwall. Now, one of the obvious questions is, why Cornwall? I mean, in my opinion, it's not only one of the most beautiful places in Britain, it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, period. But aside from that, Cornwall has an amazing history in terms of its heritage with engineering and scientific achievement. But on top of that, the Newquay Airport, where they're locating this spaceport, is located very close to the sea. And that's, of course, important with any rocket launching facility, even if you're talking about horizontal launch. When Virgin Orbit conducts their operations from Mojave, California, for example, they have to fly all the way out over the Pacific before they can drop Launcher 1. This is going to be the case, obviously, with Spaceport Cornwall as well, and a particular advantage, because Great Britain, like most European countries, is not particularly large and has a large population, which means building giant space facilities with enormous rockets is not very practical and tends to be resisted by the local population. For example, Saxavord Spaceport is all the way up in Shetland, where there is a tiny population and very few people to obstruct any sort of operations there, whereas this is located right in the heart of southern England, well, more in the west, but nevertheless, it's a place that would experience a lot of opposition from the local community if we were talking about a vertical launch facility. So Virgin Orbit is a perfect fit. And it's also a perfect fit for my friends over at Sierra Space. Dream Chaser is also going to be making use of Spaceport Cornwall as a landing facility, which will make it extremely useful to European customers. The prospect of delivering payloads directly to Europe, as opposed to having to ship these payloads transatlantic after they return to the United States, is a huge opportunity for Spaceport Cornwall and Europe in general, and Sierra Space for that matter, proving once again that Dream Chaser has a huge amount of flexibility when it comes to landing sites. So if all goes well, in the last week of August or the first week of September, Cosmic Girl will take off from Spaceport Cornwall, and it will have in its payload on Launcher 1 an international cargo, mostly British though. It will have 2 satellites from the UK Ministry of Defence, another satellite from an organization called Catapult, another satellite from a company called Space Forge, and I did a video about them recently. They're into space manufacturing on satellites specifically constructed for that purpose, another satellite from the local Cornish government, and finally a CubeSat built by Sat Revolution for the government of Oman. The satellites from the Ministry of Defense are called Prometheus II, and they're a collaborative effort from the US National Reconnaissance Office and the UK Ministry of Defense, of course. And the purpose of these satellites is mostly reconnaissance. They're going to be operating in low Earth orbit at 550 kilometers and will actually be only about 50 to 100 kilometers away from one another. The first of these satellites will include a GPS receiver, a laser detector, and a hyperspectral imager in order to create better high-definition images, and the second of these satellites will have 2 optical imaging cameras, a laser rangefinder, and a GPS receiver. The first camera will capture the Earth's surface, and the second will be used to observe the first satellite to support space situational awareness. Now, the next satellite is called Amber 1, which was developed by Satellite Applications Capital catapult and horizon technologies. Its purpose is maritime tracking, something that's extremely important, especially to the United Kingdom since they're an island nation. One of the many problems that exists as far as maritime tracking is concerned is illegal fishing. There's quite a lot of that goes on in the UK and in Europe in general. So one of the purposes of this satellite is to track the activities of various ships across the surface of the planet, especially around the United Kingdom. Illegal fishing is a serious problem. It endangers the environment, it endangers fish populations, and it endangers our food supply. And of course, GPS tracking is absolutely essential to the safety of private sailboats, private fishing boats, boats across the surface of the planet. You pretty much need GPS tracking if you're going to be safe taking to the waves, and this satellite is going to be enhancing that safety in this region. Another important factor and an advantage that Virgin Orbit has is if it's later determined that another satellite is needed to enhance observation and reconnaissance in a particular area, that satellite can be constructed quickly and cheaply if it's a small sat and deployed rapidly by Virgin Orbit, because a horizontal launch provider doesn't need nearly as much lead time. And by the way, while we're talking about the ocean, we also need to talk about the Kernel I sat, which was built and designed in Cornwall and is going to be used to maintain the health of the ocean in the region. It's going to help identify wave height, areas of sea pollution, and also the best place to plant a kelp forest. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, it's because kelp absorbs more carbon than just about any type of plant. And as a result, it also stores it and keeps it safe and out of our atmosphere. A very good plan for the future of the planet, and something that was designed and conceived right in Cornwall and will be launched from Cornwall as well. And next up is the first Welsh satellite to ever be launched into orbit. Yes, that's a big moment, I think, as well, and it's going to be for a very important project: manufacturing in space, making new types of metal alloys, new types of 3D printed organs, all sorts of cutting-edge technology, cutting-edge manufacturing that you can do in LEO that you can't do on Earth. I have a video that investigates this company and their objectives a lot more in detail, and it's linked at the end of the video. But just the prospect of a company that's getting space manufacturing started with a reusable satellite is very, very exciting. I can't wait to see what these guys have to bring to the table soon. So we have the military, we have ocean reconnaissance and the health of the ocean at stake. We have space manufacturing, so much on this first mission, and that's not all. The final satellite in this mission is courtesy of the Polish company Sat Revolution, who, by the way, are also behind this mission to Mars that they're planning to undertake in a couple of years. One of the big things that they're behind is what a lot of companies are behind right now, and that is, of course, Earth observation for a variety of different purposes. But on this particular mission, they're going to be launching the first satellite ever launched from the country of Oman. And Oman is not looking exclusively at Earth observation or weather satellites or military satellites. This satellite is actually to study deep space, because it is their ambition to send out deep space missions in the future. Oman is not going halfway on this. They are very ambitious when it comes to the future of spaceflight, and Spaceport Cornwall, Virgin Orbit, and Sat Revolution are making all of this possible. The United States, Britain, Poland, and Oman on a single mission. Very exciting, and just a taste of what is to come. This is why I'm going to cover this mission. This is why I want to continue covering British spaceflight and European spaceflight in general, because this is a new industry that is embracing innovation and reusability in a big way. And I've just started talking about about British spaceflight. Obviously, there are many other companies that I've talked about in the past, from Skyrora to Black Arrow to Orbex. So many British companies are looking to go to orbit within the next 12 to 24 months. It's an exciting time for private spaceflight, and one that I wish to cover. So if you want to travel on this journey with me, then I urge all of you to stay angry about space.